This is Energy Perspectives, a weekly podcast produced in Guyana that delves into the developments unfolding in the world's fastest growing economy.
Hello, and welcome to the Energy Perspectives podcast, a platform that brings you key insights into matters relevant to Guyana's economic development. I'm your host, Kiana Wilberg, and I'm joined today by the founder and chairman of New Haven Merchant Bank, Mr. Floyd Haynes. Mr. Haynes, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kiana. It's my pleasure. Thanks for affording me the opportunity.
Indeed. Mr. Haynes, the onset of the oil and gas industry has truly brought with it tremendous opportunities for many Guyanese businesses to flourish. However, the consensus over the years has been that one of the main barriers remains access to finance. How has your institution, New Haven Merchant Bank, responded to this?
Thanks for the question. I think New Haven Bank has introduced different types of financing. Mm-hmm. We've been innovative in terms of providing a wide variety of options for businesses. Historically, we've had retail or commercial banks. They typically provide loans, whether it's mortgages, auto loans, perhaps even some small business loans. As the country began to grow, the demand let's sort of go back. The demand previously, was for small business loans. You had traders, retailers, buyers and sellers. And so those banks at the time met that demand. As the country began to grow and expand, the demand changed. But the offer, the supply hadn't changed. So what we were able to do is to bring in a different set of options. And so companies can now access financing through a variety of other means. So, for example, commercial or retail banks can't make investments in businesses. We can. Commercial and retail bank typically don't finance startups. We can. They don't offer things like factoring on a large scale. We can. So what I would say is that we have introduced additional products or financing products to the market. And by so doing, we've widened the options for small businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Now, can you expound on what are some of the primary services that the New Haven Bank offers? And tell us a bit more about how the bank operates.
Okay, so one of my favorite questions, because I think there needs to be some clarity. There's an education gap. So first, let me tell you, a retail bank, or what we call commercial bank, is what most people are familiar with. It's the bank where you go in, you open a checking or a savings account. You use that account to make withdrawals or you make payments to other vendors. And those banks typically take customers' deposits and they in turn make loans. Mostly, like I say, housing, mortgages, auto loans, small business loans, personal loans, those types of things. What we do, a merchant bank is sort of the bridge between the private sector and investors. On the one hand, you've got investors that has money to invest. They're looking for a good return on their money. It could be individuals with high net worth. It can be institutional investors, meaning institutions that are holding pension monies, or insurance companies, and they're looking for opportunities. On the other side of the fence, you have the private sector companies that are looking for monies. What the merchant bank does, it's bring those two together in one marketplace. So we take investors' money, we put it into a fund, we take the private sector companies, we package them, and we bring the two parties together. Mm-hmm. And we get a fee for doing that. So that's one aspect of what we do. That is what we call the financing or the capital raising. Now, the financing could take various forms. It could be asset financing or what we call asset-based, where you're pledging an asset to secure the debt you're borrowing. So it could be you're pledging your receivables, you're pledging your inventory, you're pledging your equipment. Those are asset-based financing. There is also micro lending where you have no assets. but you're looking for startup money. They're usually smaller in nature and high risk. We do some of that. It involves a lot, perhaps a little bit more due diligence because, again, the risks are high and we have to mitigate our risk. And then there is equity financing. Equity financing is where you have a business and you're looking to raise capital. Your business perhaps isn't strong enough to borrow money, but you're prepared to give up some ownership in your company in exchange for financing. So that's equity financing. So we provide all those various types of financing. So that's on the financing side. We also do wealth management. This is a new concept to Guyana where people with lots of money, historically what you would do is put your money into a bank savings account and you get a return. We are now introducing a new concept to Guyana, not new to the world, it's done all over the world, where you take those monies and you invest it with us. We in turn invest those monies in a variety of products. It could be local, it could be overseas, but it gives the individual with the monies, it gives them a higher return than they can otherwise get. So that's wealth management. Essentially, it's taking your money and managing it so that you could get a return in your investment. And then the third level of service we provide is advisory services. You know, prior to oil, and a lot of these things are coming in with the advent of the discovery of hydrocarbons. So there's a huge need for financial advice, financial services. Should you expand? At what pace should you expand? Do you need a business plan, a feasibility study, cash flow projections? All of those types of things require expertise. We provide those expertise. So that's the third level. So it's capital raising or financing, wealth management, and financial advisory services.
Mr. Haynes, that sounds like a very comprehensive package that you're not just offering a solution to the challenge of access to finance, but you're also helping businesses with the advice they need to manage the wealth that can be accumulated, as well as to how to prepare the right proposals that allow them to maximize or gain entry or tap into the opportunities that, you know, the businesses may be looking at. And I think that's quite important, which takes me to my next question. How have businesses responded to the new services that you're offering to the market? How many businesses have you been able to help?
Well, it's businesses are responding slow in all honesty, and that's because it requires a cultural change. Changing culture is a very, very difficult undertaking. As I said earlier, historically, the need prior to the discovery of oil, the need was for a different type of financing. The market stepped up to the plate, and it met that demand. The demand changed post 2015, but the behavior and the culture and the supply didn't change with the demand. It lagged behind. And so we're having to do a lot of education, getting people to understand what do you need to do to access financing. So a lot of our work over the last year has been in educating clients as they come in. They come into the bank. We have to say, here's a list of products you can access, and here's what is required for each of those things. And sometimes we would even go a step further and say, we can help you do some of those. So as an example, we have a client client A is looking to acquire company B and merge it. And we had to say, okay, what this is a merger and acquisition. And to be able to do this, you need consolidated financial statements, you know, projected cash flow, all of those things, right? So these are the type of things that aren't or historically have not been thought about. And so businesses were not prepared for those types of things. So we're helping bring them along or to close that gap. I rather suspect that in a few years out, that gap would have been closed and you will find access to capital will flow much better. I don't think access to capital is 100% of the problem. It perhaps is part of the problem, even though I don't even think that. I think a major part of the problem is readiness Because smart money, in the investment world, we talk about smart money. Smart money looks for certain things before it goes where it's being requested. And you have to have a solid business plan. You have to have a feasibility study. You have to have projected financial statements. If you've been in business long enough, you need audited statements. All of those types of things. You need what I call the ecosystem of a business. Oftentimes, you have what I call the core competence model, where someone is an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter, and they get a contract, and they think that's a business. And so they come into the bank for financing. And we say that's not really a business. You need systems in place. You need a finance system. You need a management system and all of those. And then you need to know certain numbers, right? You need to know certain metrics and statistics that support business decisions. And all of those types of things are services we provide. And sometimes people are taken aback. They go, wow, I came into the bank for a loan and you're charging me. And what we have to say, no. For you to access that loan, you need to be here. You're currently here. What we're trying to do is get you from here to there. And that's a service, and you have to pay for that. You can go outside and get somebody to do it. Things like a business valuation. You walk into the bank for a loan. Wow, how do you value your business, right? And most times investors would not take a valuation that's done by the company itself. They want an independent third-party objective. Right. We offer that. So that's the kind of thing I think. We're helping bring companies along so that they can be ready to access that capital. Their capital is all over the place. I don't think there is any shortage of available smart money, but it requires certain conditions, and we have to get businesses to understand that. Some of it's a cultural change, it's a behavioral change, it's a mentality change. But we're working, and I find that businesses are adapting to it. Thus far, we've helped a lot of small businesses. We've deployed some funds. We're going to be making two major deployment probably in the next couple of weeks or so. And these are large amounts, millions of US dollars. And then we've also made several small business loans to individuals who've come in for one reason or another. So I think we're, with the monies we've deployed, we're just getting started. We're literally just getting started, but I like the trajectory. I think we're on a good track.
At the end of 2023, can you say or give us an estimate of what's the value of capital you've been able to deploy through your institution to help various businesses?
So at the end of 2022, we hadn't yet deployed. We were hoping to deploy that the capital. Mm-hmm. We were looking, but we had term sheets and everything signed up and ready to go. But we got delayed, we got distracted. Venezuela, all those types of things affect investments. And so we had to push some of that back. But were we to deploy those monies on track, we probably would have deployed about 40 or 50 million US dollars.
This is in 2022?
This is in 2023.
2023.
The end of last year.
Got you.
And those are large investments to local businesses. And then we would have deployed, I don't know the number in Guyana dollars, to small and micro businesses, but there were about 4 or 5 of those businesses for whom we have deployed capital. That's on a smaller amount, you're 5 million, 10 million, those types of things.
Okay, thank you very much. Also on funding for small businesses, you launched a very important initiative, a $25 million US SME fund. Can you tell us a bit about what inspired this initiative, as well as what would businesses need to bring to the table or do to be able to tap it?
Yeah, so we're still waiting for approvals to actually launch the fund. We have the fund documents we developed. We require certain approvals from the Guyana Securities Council, okay, as well as the central bank. And so, although we're licensed by the central bank to deploy a fund, and let me explain what a fund. The fund is essentially a pool of money, like a box hand, mm-hmm. right? So various individuals put money. You create this big pool, and then you off-lend. You in turn take those monies and you look for specific opportunities. The goal is the people that are putting those monies into the funds are looking for a return. So you
Right.
can't just deploy the money willy-nilly. You have to make sure that the investment is de-risked as best you can, and you also have to make sure that the return on the investment is something that the investors are looking for. So, but the idea is we will, once we launch that fund, I mean, think of it. It's a way, Guyana has a terminology. We say money is not circulating. Well, we intend to circulate money because essentially money goes from individuals or institution into a fund back into private sector businesses. Now, what would private sector businesses need to do? They need to be prepared to access that money. Funds aren't set up to make loans. They're set up to make investments. And I keep harping on this. There is this educational gap between a loan and an investment. A loan is when you borrow the money. For you to borrow money, you have to have something to secure that debt. Nobody's just going to loan you money in trust. And a lot of times companies don't have the assets to secure loans. So what they're looking for is an investment. And for someone to invest in your business, whether it's my fund, our fund, or anyone else, you have to have a real business with real metrics, with real data. And some of it can be projected, right? Understanding there are startups. When you were starting up a business, you don't have all of those things. You can make solid projections. You need a business plan. Have you looked at the market? What market share are you trying to garner? All those types of things, right? And so what I would say what businesses need to do is to begin to adapt to the new environment and the new demands, which is a demand for rigorous financial data. And we could help you along the way. But that's how you would access. Then you'd come to the fund, we'd look at your ask, and we would provide several scenarios or options. You've got 3 options based on your financial condition. Scenario A, B, or C. And then you could make, sort of a cafeteria plan, you can make your decision or your choice.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. For someone who's interested in securing the services of the bank, what are some of the opportunities, the business opportunities that they might be able to have access to in using your institution? What can Guyanese investors expect?
Well, so the bank services 2 sets of clientele. On the one hand, the financing aspect of the bank, we service the private sector or individuals looking for money. So individuals that are looking to borrow money, the bank offers a suite of products, perhaps even more products than your traditional retail or commercial bank, because they're constrained by certain legislation. So we offer a suite of products, which I list at random. It's, equipment financing, receivable, purchase order. We just did a small microloan where someone had purchase orders, right? It's a business. Their client issued them a purchase order to go out and buy goods and services. They don't have the money. They come to us, we loan them the money. We know it's real because they have a purchase order, right? We loan them the money against that purchase order. They provide the goods and service, they get paid, they pay us back. So companies, the private sector and individuals can look to us for financing because we offer a wide variety of products. Investors can look to us as a vehicle through which they can make investments. They may decide, no, I want to make my investment myself. I'll go out, I'll find that small business, I'll do my due diligence, I'll do my KYCs, and I'll make my own investment. That's fine with us. A more efficient way to do that is to come through an institution like ours that is experienced and has the know-how to do all of those types of vetting. And then we can make certain guarantees. So investors can invest in the bank through the fund, not give money to the bank, but you put money into a fund that is managed, that is legitimate, and that is regulated. And that fund will off-lend, as we call it, or they will make investments and provide a return. So you're beginning to see how it works. We are truly the bridge between the investor and the private sector, or the investee, the groups or persons looking for money. We're truly the axis upon which all of that money turns. So it does circulate in a real way. So,
thank you, Mr. Haynes. Now, as Guyana's oil and gas sector develops, we currently have 3 oil projects in stream, and we're on track to do 6 by 2027. That means there's going to be a lot of money circulating and a lot of business opportunities. How do you view the financial sector in responding to the changing tide that is coming? How would you like to see it transform to meet those growing expectations?
A very good question. The country is growing exponentially. It's the fastest growing country in the world. As the country begins to grow, the demand for capital, available monies will increase exponentially. There can be no transformation of any country without the infusion of capital. It is sort of the root of transformation and development. So what that means is the demand will increase tenfold. What financial institutions have to be able to do is to adapt quickly. And so there probably is going to need to be some changes in legislation. Because again, prior to the discovery of oil, the demand was different. And we met that demand.
Yeah.
We're now in a new dispensation. So let me give you a good example. We need legislation, and we probably have some of them. And I know the government is working on several, if not all of them, because I've had conversations. But let's take, for example, you own a property. You own it outright, free and clear. There's no mortgage. You should be able to very easily go to the bank and borrow against that property. Right now, that's not a trivial thing. To be able to do that in Guyana right now, it's a hassle. It's it should be seamless because there is no risk, right? You have a property that you own outright, so you need legislation that can facilitate. Same thing with a piece of equipment. You've got a piece of equipment that's worth, I don't know, $10 million. You own it free and clear. Can you walk into a bank, pledge that equipment, and borrow against it? Right? Right now, that process is not as seamless and efficient as it should be. And because it isn't as seamless and efficient, you've got what we call dead capital. You've got monies tied up in those assets that have not been unleashed, that need to be unleashed and get into the system. So one of the things I would like to see is the legislation and the support that would allow businesses to tap into available capital by using those types of things, pledging your assets, whether it's a house, it's equipment, whatever, and making the process seamless. That's a major part of it. In most places, you can do that. Take out a second mortgage, you pledge your equipment, those types of things. So I would like to see that. And like I said, there is a big part of the challenge. I've said this to you before, but it's worth repeating because I think people need to understand. You had a situation where the demand was different. Businesses were much smaller. There were retailers, there were buyers and sellers, traders, service type entity, and they demanded a different type of capital. The banks stepped up to the plate. In fact, the banks evolved in a sense to meet that demand. Now the demand has shifted, but the supply continues on that old continuum. And so there is a gap or a disconnect between supply and demand. New Haven has now come into the market and we're saying, hey, we can satisfy that gap, but there needs to be more of that. And while we're doing that, the legislation and all of those things have got to have to be the wind behind our backs to make it seamless, right? For small businesses and people with ideas to finance those ideas through an institution like New Haven.
Thank you for breaking that down for us, Mr. Haynes. And to close this week's episode, we have the premier event coming up, the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo. And we will have a lot of attendees as well as potential investors part of that event. What is your advice to these attendees, potential investors who may be looking to start a business in Guyana's energy sector?
I would say, so usually as part of the energy sector, there is at the back of the room, there are booths with companies set up displaying their wares, their offer, their services, those types of things. If someone is looking to invest, I would think you pick your vertical, your industry, and you identify companies that are offering those type of services and get to know those companies. Meet the owners, sit down, talk to them. There are a couple of ways you can do this as an investor, right? If you want a presence in Guyana, then perhaps you want to find a local firm that's doing what you're doing and try to partner with that local firm, do your due diligence, do your vetting. And a lot of that has already happened and is continuing to happen. If you want to be a passive investor, you've got monies available and you don't have the time to go down to Guyana, then you come through a vehicle like the private equity fund, right? You suss us out, as guys would say on the street. You suss us out and see what we're offering. And we are going to have a suite of funds, whether it be a mutual fund, a real estate fund, or a small, medium enterprise SME fund. Through any one of those vehicles, you can invest in Guyana. So there are several opportunities. For attendees, local attendees, I would say, I'm preaching to the choir, everybody knows this. You have to have all your ducks lined up, package your business well, be prepared to have answers to basic questions. You have to know your numbers. You've got to know your statistics. You got to know your metrics, your analytics, your data analytics, your business. What drives your business? Which market are you in? What percent of the market do you have? Or what percentage of the market you're looking for? What is your customer acquisition cost, if it's relevant to your line of business? All of those types of things. If you show up to the conference ready with those type of numbers, you'll attract tons of investors.
Mr. Haynes, thank you so much for participating in this week's episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. You certainly enriched the conversation here, and we hope to have you back at a later time. Thank you as well for listening to us.
Thank you for listening to the Guyana Energy Perspectives podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Register today for the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, coming to Georgetown, Guyana, February 19 to 22, 2024.